Around the NFL podcast. BPA, best podcast available.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hans as I come to you from a virtual room filled with some heroes. Mark Sessler, Greg Rosenthal, and he's back. Steve Weish. And it's time to go around the NFC. What's up, Steve?
Oh, man, I'm fired up for this. NFC is my first favorite conference. I'm an NFC kid, having been born in Minneapolis, which is why I'm going to be talking about the Vikings today, and I'm real fired up about it. So I'm just ready to hear, the rest of the heroes' great takes on this segment.
Well, normally if the money drop at the beginning says best podcast available, we wouldn't have someone on that has his own podcast, The Huddle and Flow. You may disagree with that, sentiment there, Steve.
Yeah, this was definitely a need pick, Greg. It's not a BPA.
It's not clear who money was referring to.
That's true.
So it's really you could perceive it any way you wish.
Huddle and Flow, which please check it out with Weish and Jim Trotter on a hiatus right now. So technically, That's not in the conversation, and that's why we were able to safely use that drop.
Ah, okay. We were an opt-out.
The gif of the guy going like this. All right. So, in case you missed it, on Tuesday, the great Claybon was with us. We went around the AFC in exactly 48 minutes. And that's so important, Steve. I think this is the first time you've joined us for this particular exercise. And the discipline required to pull this off, you are a disciplined man. And that's why we feel comfortable that you'll know not to blow through stop signs when it comes to analysis of each team.
I'm not even going to comment on that because I might be blowing through a stop sign.
Well, we'll have sound effects. There will be a sound, a countdown from 10 seconds. So you'll be fair warned.
All right. So the setup, easy. Each of us take one team per division in the NFC. Try to end your analysis quickly with a question, and then we talk about that team. Let's have some fun. Ricky, how you doing, by the way?
Uh-oh.
Oh, geez.
Ricky went.
She doesn't realize. I'm trying to bring her into the show, and then I ask her, and then there's 15-second delay.
Yeah, it's so funny because we're not in a studio, and I have a whole computer set up that I have to get into a virtual studio. It's so seamless, Dan.
you millennials
so
and your
easy.
excuses.
Dead on analysis.
I will destroy you. Have a great show.
All right, let's kick it off. Right now, around the NFC we go, starting with the NFC East. Hit the horn, Ricky. Oh, it's like I'm back at DJ's on the Jersey Shore in Belmar there. Here we go. The Washington football team, Greg Rosenthal.
Ooh, we're starting with the most exciting team in this division. I like it all. This is just like a solid football team. It's a solid head coach. It's Ron Rivera. It's a lot of professionals. Look at this defensive line. Look at this secondary. They quickly rebuilt with William Jackson and Kendall Fuller. Look at their offensive line. They might be bringing in Charles Leno to play left tackle. That was kind of their one hole. I think it's just, I feel a little bit like Washington fans, which maybe they're looking at this team and they're like, how do we not go 10-7 or 11-6? And you think back to the last 2 decades where they have one playoff win. They're one of the least winning teams of the decade. Where do you think this team could have the rug pulled out from? Because I've watched Washington so long, I kind of expect it to implode from within. And this one, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, though, this time, Steve. Steve's making a face.
You just glossed over the whole quarterback thing, man.
Right. Okay.
You just forgot.
Well, we've covered that. That's an upgrade. It's an upgrade. It's an upgrade.
Back down. I'm not going to blow the time schedule here.
No, we've got 3 minutes here. Don't you think Ryan Fitzpatrick is an upgrade from? I mean, if nothing else, from where they were last year.
Yeah, based off what they had last year. But I mean, once we go around this whole division, I mean, is he the best quarterback in the division?
No, definitely not.
No, and if you look at the whole NFL, they're really you could look at Houston and Washington as really some of the only teams that don't have either a long-term starter at veteran or a young quarterback that they've latched onto as their future quarterback of tomorrow. And I mean, I like Fitzpatrick as much as anyone else, but if things go awry, you're suddenly looking at starts by Kyle Allen or Taylor Heineke. And it's just like that is what sets you apart if things don't go perfectly with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I mean, we love Ryan Fitzpatrick, and we're all happy that it looks like he's going to get a chance to start. But at the end of the day, there's probably a ceiling here that Fitzpatrick puts on your team. He's a fun quarterback, but this isn't like a championship caliber quarterback. But in the NFC East, I feel like as long as he doesn't have one of those Fitzpatrick years where he kills you with a ton of turnovers, this defense could be legitimately special. We know what the front four is about, and their first round draft pick. Please, someone jump in.
Jamin Davis.
Yes, that's somebody that addresses a huge need in the middle of their defense. That's where they're going to win games.
I just love the weapons. Terry McLaurin, like legit number one. Your boy, Logan Thomas at tight end. Antonio Gibson, one of my favorite running backs to watch in the league. You add Curtis Samuel. You add De'Ami Brown in the third round, who a lot of people like. And then you have Kelvin Harmon, who was productive, who tore his ACL. Cam Sims, who made a lot of players. Just like, I think the way you win with passing games now is to have 5 or 6 receivers. It's not about having 2 or 3. Washington has that. It's got the defense. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that this is a playoff team.
And don't forget, you got Young Turner calling the plays.
10, 9.
Yeah, you just really sent that segment out with
5,
a teaming
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, a reminder, we have 3 timeouts also. For any reason, Steve, it could be anything. If you want to stop the clock, it's collective. All right, let's move on. Young Turner. Philadelphia Eagles, Mark Sessler.
I feel like the Eagles are a little bit of an eye of the beholder team because it depends on how you want to look at it. To me, they're on a full-on rebuild, okay? But I also think that there's certainly some weird juju inside the building. You've got Nick Sirianni offering rather strange press conferences. You got Howie Roseman getting caught on national TV, getting like Heisman on an awkward fist bump with an agitated coworker. So, but then at the same time, you can look at this roster. Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz if they keep him. I am just wondering, because you got some stars on defense too, is this team maybe being looked at a little bit under the radar in a shaky NFC East? Or are we like 6 months away from Sirianni, getting agitated with a mouthy radio man saying this, Ricky?
I'm pissed off, Angelo.
Gilfoyle Peterson.
I think they could be overlooked because I don't think any team is an incredible favorite in this division. So I did look. Now that like the NFL's partnering with, Caesars and stuff, like I think we can talk about this. The Giants and the Eagles are huge underdogs to win this division. Plus, 4-1, 5-1, the two of them. And it's like, I would take those two and give them a chance and take them both to win the division because I don't think there's that much separating the top team in this division from the bottom. The reason I give the Eagles a chance is the reason they won the Super Bowl. They're still looking pretty good on both lines. There's a lot of talent on both their offensive and their defensive lines.
And this division always comes. I mean, there's rarely, a 13-3 or an upcoming year's a 14-3 type team that wins this division. It is usually been a 10-6 team that's decided on upon the last 2 weeks of the season. But when it comes to the Eagles, I just can't wait until Jalen Hurts gets in the huddle and says, "Okay, guys, rock, paper, scissors. Okay, what are we going to do on this third and one?" Right? Isn't that the Sirianni decision making thing, the rock, paper, scissors thing? So it just seems internally in that building. We can look at the roster, we can look at the coaching change, but when you saw the chaos that happened this season, that trickles down. That does trickle down as much as the coaching staff tries to insulate it. So if they can, Jeffrey Lurie, some of the decisions he made, if they can isolate this team because there's so many new players on this roster from some of that chaos, then I'm with Greg. I think they do have a shot because there's no decisive team, and whoever is saying that the Giants are extreme underdogs to win this division, I really want to have what they're drinking.
Save it.
Yeah.
We're saving it.
The Eagles have struggled to identify wide receiver talent. Devonta Smith feels like a no-brainer. And by the way, Landon Dickerson, second-round pick, center. Brian Baldinger called him the best offensive lineman in this class, and it's not close. Stay healthy, son.
That's what I said. The O-line looking good.
Stay healthy. Up next, the Dallas Cowboys, Steve Weish.
Oh, yeah. So since we're talking about experts in mediocrity with this division and these teams, let's go to Dallas. Look, Dak is back. He's got his paper, and they were playing well before Dak got hurt. And then it was just a trick. I mean, everybody started getting hurt. So the offensive line, still a little bit of a question mark. They addressed some of it in the draft, right? We know Dak's got the weapons at the skill position. But the Dallas Cowboys last year were the Alice Cowboys because there's no D to be spoken of.
Look at that.
Right? I mean, think about it. They got no pass rush. Their linebackers didn't play well. And their secondary, I mean, that's was a fantasy football quarterback's dream to play against. So they go out and they target some of these players. They get Micah Parsons. And let's not forget that Dan Quinn is now running this defense. So he's got Micah Parsons kind of be his Bobby Wagner. Doesn't necessarily have some of the pieces that he did in Seattle. So this might look a little bit more like Atlanta's defense until you get some of the personnel. But I do think the Cowboys, with Dak back, can score enough points and to be enough of a problem offensively, especially in this division, to kind of deal with a defense that's going to be better. Not great, but good enough to keep it in every game.
I think they were annoyed that one of the top corners didn't fall to them, that they seemed like a rock-solid target for a cornerback. But I think Dan Quinn has been put in a better position than last year's coordinator, Mike Nolan, because they went all defense in this draft. And I think Parsons is, I'm a little concerned that, the reports that he's starting riots and lunchrooms or whatever that was. But maybe you need a guy that can start a riot on this defense. I mean, Dan Quinn has a chance to be, because I think sometimes you get these head coaches that, that burns out, but you put them back in the coordinator spot, and they are that much more valuable for the experience they've had. Dan Quinn has a chance to be like coordinator of the year. And I like Dan Quinn a lot, so maybe I overthink it, but this could be a much better defense. Yeah.
And by the way, when Weiss says Alice Cowboys, it doesn't mean like Alice, the woman's name. He's not saying that. It's Alice, Allas. I just want to make that very clear to the audience.
I think Alice Cowboys, though, could take off as a brand. I mean, I feel like Eagles fans are already,
I think with the Cowboys, it does come down to the defense, doesn't it? Because they're going to score a lot of points, especially if Dak's
will
there.
they? Here's
Yes.
They will. But the one thing we made a mistake with the Lions last year is we were like, that 6 games before Matthew Stafford got hurt, they were like, third in the league, and they're going to be awesome now coming back with the same guys. I do think we should slow expectations a little, that they were these insane numbers when their defense couldn't do anything for 6 games. But now you have Dak Prescott coming off an ACL, and just things change
10,
year to year. Like, their
9,
defense needs to be a lot better, because I don't know if they can expect their offense to be that good.
5, 4.
So you don't think they're off it? I'm not sure what your point was there.
1.
That, expecting a top 3 offense is expecting too much.
Okay.
Guy coming off a torn ACL.
The New York Giants. Big Blue. They were smart. They made some smart moves. Dave Gettleman, all right. Dave Gettleman. Just when you think he's out, he does something that you feel like might buy him more time. This time it was trade back in a wise manner, according to all the people that seem to know these things, and set themselves up for a couple of years with draft picks. And then they go, and of course they had Kadarius Toney in the first round. That's a wide receiver with a lot of upside. Kenny Golladay got the bag in free agency. Saquon Barkley's back. That's all good. It's all good. And it's like Daniel Jones. This is it. He's about to take off. But this offensive line, we've talked about it on the show. Bad. Very bad last year. And Dave Gettleman, when he was questioned about why they didn't really focus on it at all in the draft, he said, it wasn't there for us. We didn't like the players, which is all fine and good. But now you just got to hope all these guys you drafted last year that didn't play a lick in 2020 are much better. Are the Giants still highly vulnerable on offense because they got a fumble-prone quarterback that doesn't have anybody that can block?
Absolutely. I mean, they're trusting their evaluations because they, took Andrew Thomas over these other 3 tackles who ended up being awesome last year. He's the key to their team. And Matt Pert, who's their right tackle, they're bringing back Nate Solder to maybe be the swing tackle, was their 3rd-round pick. That's probably the key to their team, because I like the defense. I like the weapons. I think the weapons are enough for Daniel Jones. We talked a lot about Patrick Graham last year doing a lot with the parts he had. He's got more parts on defense this year. So I know you're angling for this team, Weiss. You got a little Giants fever.
I really like, and the main reason why I like what they did, and that you'll love this, Rosie, being a Patriots fan, is that they didn't make a lot of the dumb mistakes right? While they were kind of working through some of the things they had to work through, including a fumble-prone quarterback, they weren't a team that made a lot of penalties. They weren't a team, other than the fumbles, that turned the ball over a lot or did things to put their team in a bad situation. They just didn't have the ability to put points on the board last year. And that's going to help if Saquon comes back and stays healthy and some of the other pieces that they got. I mean, this is all on Daniel Jones. So now if he comes back and he plays fairly well, cuts down on the mistakes, this is enough of a fundamentally solid team, since solid has been the word du jour, that, again, can compete in this division that are the masterclass of mediocrity.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say also that, you're dealing with the New York media. Daniel Jones is not, there aren't going to be kid gloves at this point, because the whole narrative is Daniel Jones is being put in a place to succeed as well as almost any quarterback in the league with the weapons they've added. And if you're 4 weeks into the campaign and everyone looks solid, but Daniel Jones is, protected or not fumbling the ball left and right, the tabloids are going to go utterly nuts. And so it will be entertaining one way or another.
Steve, over under Giants wins 8.5. What do you think?
Taking the over, my friend.
There we go. Might win the division. All right, NFC East down. We move to the NFC North, and let's start with the Detroit Lions.
Where else would we start? It's the centerpiece of America, Detroit.
What? I think it's the
like this is like where America was born. Steel. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to get excited about the Lions.
You sound like a kid that didn't do his homework, and now he's just trying to bluff his way through.
I didn't prepare a question about the Lions. But.
Jared Goff said they had the best offensive line in the league this week, and I thought, you know what? He might not be far off. If Penei Sewell is that good, Taylor Decker, a guy you trust at left tackle, a Pro Bowler they just signed in Ragnow at center, and you got Jonah Jackson, a recent high pick at one of the two guard spots. Like, I don't know what else the Lions got, but they got a good offensive line, and that's like a start. That is where the Dan Campbell era starts. Otherwise, like, I have no idea what I'm going to see out of this team.
Makes sense, too, because they don't know who their quarterback of the future is. They know their future at wide receiver and running back is probably not in the building right now. Kerryon Johnson just got the boot, by the way.
Yeah, how about that?
But they have the foundation. Everything's built in the trenches, and they feel like they have an offensive line, and then they can build off that. There's logic, again, to what the Detroit Lions are doing in terms of rebuild. Even if you set an over-under for wins for the Lions, I would put it at around 4. It's not going to be a great 2021 season, but maybe they're on the right track here.
I don't like this, though. Jared Goff, yes, you have an offensive line, but your targets are Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, Khalif Raymond, Quintez Cephas, and rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown, who probably is going to get a ton of playing time. I just, this is a team.
I'm not going to get open.
Well, this is one of those teams that passed on Justin Fields, and it's like you're going to be viewed on how he succeeds in your own division. So it's like, I love making a nice offensive line, but you maybe passed over a totally psychotically awesome quarterback. So we'll see.
Yeah, look, this is how Dan Campbell builds it. I mean, look at what the Saints did, that guard to guard. All those years, they built guard to guard. Now they had Penei Sewell. And here's a little nugget. They liked him enough to contemplate moving up to 4 with Atlanta to get him, because they thought that Cincinnati might take him at 5. So Penei Sewell, when they were able to fall to him, that's why you saw those guys doing all the hugging that they did when they got Penei Sewell. So it is all, Dan Campbell now, he's got the kneecap biters, right? So that's how they want to establish it. And then who knows next offseason if Deshaun Watson becomes available. If some of those guys become available, that can be a quick fix if you've got some of the pieces. So, again, this is a rebuild. No one is expecting them to win the division, even if Jordan Love is a starting quarterback for the Packers. But they've clearly shown their hand as to how they want to build this team. Tough guys, inside out, and guys, that's a formula that's worked for a lot of teams, but you got to have a quarterback to be able to do it.
It does feel like a new day, though, in Detroit. Like, Brad Holmes feels organized.
6 or 7 of their defensive starters, I don't know who it's going to be. And we don't know who Aaron Glenn is going to be as their coordinator. It's, like, wide open on their defense.
Their staff is good. Their staff is very, very good.
Up next, the Chicago Bears, Mark Cecil.
Remember, I got on that Lions bandwagon last year, and the thing fell off the highway, but I was 1 year too early. Anyways, the Bears, how about this? The days of killing Ryan Pace, which I have, done essentially every episode going back for 2 or 3 years, I think they're over, because I give the Bears, I feel so differently about them now. They tried for Russell Wilson, it didn't work out. They then, listen, they are the team that went and made the move for Justin Fields, and that started with Matt Nagy having a conversation with Ryan Day, Ohio State coach, a year ago, where Day said, this is a generational talent. And that's where the Nuggets started. And Matt Nagy said, I'm in on this. So I just wonder, though, here's my question. A week or, these guys, their butts were on fire a week ago. And it's like they were playing for their jobs. And you thought maybe the whole thing gets swept out. At this point, their butts are much cooler. They have bought new life with this quarterback pick. Do you think, though, that Matt Nagy, after all we've seen, and Ryan Pace are the right guys to continue what they're doing? Or is this just preventing the inevitable year into Justin Fields' career? He's out.
All right.
They're
well,
out.
let me say this. All right. Let's see this new quarterback on the field, and I'll have a better idea of this entire regime, because we knew the Trubisky move was disastrous for the franchise, and they're very lucky, extremely fortunate, Pace and Nagy, to get another bite at the apple here. I would think if things go sideways this year and Fields' development isn't where people expect it to be, they're out. They might not even make it to week 17 or week 18. But yeah, if Fields is as good as people think he could be, not only was it a brilliant move to breathe some life back into the organization and bring in this guy that could be potentially franchise altering, it does, for job security, was a huge move by both those guys. It was a no-brainer all the way around.
Yeah, look, their butts are still very hot. I mean, people may like their smiling faces right now, but if it doesn't work, they're out. And Justin Fields is going to be playing for a different coordinator, head coach next year. And I like what they did. I'm completely with Dan. My first thought is they may have bought themselves some time. If Fields comes out, if they're competitive, he does some things with some of the weapons that he has. I mean, their offensive line is still so-so. They could not run the ball at all for the past 2 years. I mean, that part of things has to be figured out. But if they could at least show some signs, they may say, okay, we can build around Justin Fields. But if it's fits and starts, are they open the season with Andy Dalton?
I mean, this isn't the 2017 Bears, though. That's the problem. It's not Mitch Trubisky's Bears. Like, yes, you're changing people's lives. Our producer on the TV side, Matt Tanton, he had jumped ship from the Bears. He's back in now. Like, you're bringing people back in. But their offensive line, they're starting a rookie on one side, Jermaine Ifedi on the other. It's not the same Khalil Mack. It's not the same Akeem Hicks. Like, unless those guys are as good as they used to be, it's not going to work.
You just guarantee that this part of the podcast will be on our network program because Matt Tanton is producing that thing.
Smooth move.
Up next, the Minnesota Vikings. Steve Walsh.
Man, well, Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman, guys, they've gone and done it. They've drafted a quarterback, and Kellen Mond, even though he's a third-round pick, it is going to take those 3 consecutive, where they're coming, below 200-yard passing games by Kirk Cousins, where they go 1-2 before the fan base is play Mond. They're not, look, who knows if Mond is going to get ready. He's got a completely different skill set than Kirk Cousins, but they have introduced themselves into the quarterback controversy world, and it is about time because Kirk Cousins, he's going to show up every day. Some weeks he's going to bring you junk mail, and some days he's going to bring you a nice stimmy check. Okay, but this is a team that is so reliant on Dalvin Cook as well. Now, I like some of the things they did to enhance their offensive line. Okay, they've done some things to get better on the offensive line, which they had to do. Their defense is going to be better. Remember last year they were just decimated by injuries. You get Anthony Barr and Daniil Hunter back. I think Patrick Peterson still got some game left. Everyone's mocking that free agent signing. I think he's got some game left to come out and help. So I think the Vikings are going to contend for the division. Okay, even with those 3 consecutive minus 200-yard passing games from Kirk Cousins, because they've got Dalvin Cook, and even though there's going to be whispers of play Kellen Mond, especially if he has a good preseason, the Vikings are going to hold firm on Kirk, and they are going to challenge for the division.
I'm with you. I like that. I think Darisaw, Wyatt Davis, those are the 2 linemen. And here's the thing. This is why it'd be stupid to put in the rookie if Cousins, and when Cousins goes into one of those 3-week funks. He always comes out of it, and then for the next 5 weeks, he's in like the top 3 in the league in passer rating, and he's got an absurd touchdown to interception ratio. That's just the Kirk Cousins experience. So bailing on him when he goes into a slump is just costing yourself down the line.
I would worry about this, though, in terms of, Mond becoming like Mr. Excitement, you still have to pay Kirk Cousins $35 million guaranteed next season. So, he's untradeable, unless the team is completely out of their minds. And so the controversy will wage on. It's not easy to get rid of Kirk Cousins for next season. So that's.
But he's not like an albatross like some other quarterbacks either.
No,
he's
fine.
been
he's streaky. It's weird because you think of him as this like steady, boring guy. No, he is either on fire, like in a good way, or he's lighting your playbook on fire. They need those rookies though on the offensive line to like play well. Everyone always like slots in. Okay, well we signed 2 good rookies, and we drafted one in the first round. That solves that. It's like no, half the time it's going to be a disaster. It's like a bigger problem. It's like starting a couple rookies.
This is on your radar, Greg. I like it.
Just saying.
But you're right. There's always the assumption, we fixed their offensive line. Well, let's see. All right, the Green Bay Packers. Yikes. All right, so Aaron Rodgers obviously in the conversation, top 10 quarterback all time. Coming off a year in which he won MVP for the 3rd time. He's furious. He's filled with venom and vengeance. That's venomgence. So perhaps knowing the man and how spiteful he is, and nobody knows him more than the Packers internally, perhaps this is the time. Yeah, he's declaring vengeance. Perhaps this is the time to trade a 37-year-old quarterback before he goes and retires on you. And I know it takes you completely out of contention in 2020, 21 and all that, and maybe for the next couple of years. But maybe if you truly know the situation, this is the right move. Anybody agree with me?
What is the right move? Trade him?
To trade him?
If he's telling you, and he's telling all free agents, don't come back, I'm leaving, and he's telling you face to face, I'm never playing for you again, maybe you should listen to him and reset your franchise.
I guess my point would be, unless you're getting established players back right now, let him rot for a year, because you're only getting the draft picks are what is helping you.
Let him rot, Greg says.
I'm not buying that he's going to be out. We're already seeing a little bit of hedging that this is a solution that could be fixed by former teammates on our network. James Jones, John Kuhn talking on the radio. So if they think it can be fixed, I think it can be fixed. And if you're only getting draft picks, those draft picks are the exact same getting them next April or next February as they are right now. So you might as well just wait and see.
Well, here's the thing, Greg. I mean, to your point, though, if you're going to trade him, go ahead and trade him before the season, because you drafted Jordan Love in the first round. He's going to play at some point. So if you're going to trade him, move him. I don't think the Packers are going to trade him. I think it is you play for us or you play for no one. Go host Jeopardy or Soul Train, whatever it may be that tickles your fancy. But you are not going to play for anyone else if it's not us. You still get Jordan Love reps for the year. You
tough
still
six,
have the
though,
same
for Jordan
impact.
Love. Tough shoes
They
to fill.
drafted
This
him in
is
the first
like
round. He's got to play anyway.
I get it, but it's kind of a no-win. Like you're taking over for the MVP. It is a tough situation.
But you can spin it saying he's the one who sat out Packers Nation. We didn't trade him. We didn't dump him. He's the one who wanted to go sit in the sandbox. So that's the way they have to spin it, because there's no way they're going to win this battle, especially after the same circus that happened with Brett Favre seems to be to some degree playing out again.
I would be concerned about the Jordan Love angle, though. I mean, all whispers and reports out of Green Bay, wasn't even the backup last year, that he just didn't develop. And they knew, coming out of Utah State, that he was going to have to take time. But still, there's no evidence of, there's he's blowing up in practice and he's like a Colin Kaepernick versus Alex Smith type situation. It's like, who is this guy? Is he the starter? Can he do it?
Isn't Matt LaFleur supposed to be a quarterback whisperer? I'm tired of so much of this stuff. These guys are getting hired to quarterback whisper and to coach up.
Time out, Ricky. Go on, Steve. Let's just continue the Rodgers conversation. I'm pulling a T.O. Go ahead.
No, these guys are getting hired because they're the offensive gurus, right? And they can't develop a quarterback who you took in the first round. Sounds to me like this quarterback whisperer is kind of like a quarterback mumbler. I'm tired. I'm tired of sitting here saying that guys can't develop.
A fire today.
No, I mean this has been in my crow for a while. When all these coaches are getting paid big money, they're leapfrogging other candidates, deserving candidates, because they're great play callers and great play schemers, and they can't develop a guy you draft in the first round.
That's fair.
Don't be
Is that
afraid.
always on the
You're
quarterback?
totally right, but I think part of the issue is that I don't think Matt LaFleur wanted to move up to draft Jordan Love, and he feels a little powerless in this situation.
But you know what? Everybody's got to grow up a little bit. Everybody's got to put on their big boy pants. You know, like Aaron Rodgers has got to live with the situation or retire, whatever. Just grow up. If you're still upset that Jordan Love's in the building and you're a head coach, Matt LaFleur, deal with it. That's just the reality, and don't be afraid of it, and embrace trying to grow him into a star. That, going back to my original point, Greg, was that if this is really the way this thing is turning out, and this is not about money, and maybe not. Mrs. Miller, my social studies teacher in 8th grade, said money makes the world go round. It's what everything's about. And if this is actually deep down just about Aaron Rodgers getting a raise, pay the man. But if you sense that this is actually something else, something about his personality and a sense of betrayal and all this ugliness, it's starting to make the Brett Favre situation look pleasant in comparison, cut your losses and set your franchise up for 10 years.
Yeah, my thing would be that just do that next year, because what you don't want is Aaron Rodgers blazing through the AFC playoffs, especially when you're not getting anything back. I presume that's going to help you this year. Now, if you're telling me,
but that's an assumption, by the way, Greg, that they wouldn't get anything back.
Yeah, so I'm saying if it's not just draft picks, if someone is willing to trade you, Bradley Chubb and Cortland Sutton from Denver, or Vegas is willing to trade you like all their good players, I just don't see that happening. I see this as a retirement for a year, and he comes back, and then there's a trade, or he's just going to come back, which feels a lot more likely.
I mean, it's not easy time to be Brian Gutekunst, because it's like you're the person who's attached to all this chaos. And yeah, you know what? Trade him at some point, whether it's this year or next. Then you've got this quarterback sitting there, Jordan Love, who better be really good, or the place is going to be set on fire.
Gute, some storms have hit the shores of Germany's favorite general manager, and Bob McGinn of The Athletic reported that Rodgers has mocked Gutekunst in group text messages with teammates, referring to Gutekunst as Jerry Krause. And by the way, Jerry Krause, first of all, one of the most successful GMs of all time. He was one of the most successful GMs of all time because of Michael Jordan. And yes, everybody knows the ESPN doc and learned about the Jerry Krause power struggle within the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. But the great late Chris Wessling once recommended a book to me that I'm just finishing right now, Playing for Keeps, David Halberstam. That really gives you an idea of what was going on in Chicago. And Jerry Krause, and rest in peace, was a man that had a lot of demons and a lot of insecurities. So if you know the true story of Jerry Krause, it's one of the worst things you could call somebody, because, Krause,
he's a Hall of Famer.
Thought he deserved it.
If Gutekunst can get 6 rings in a Hall of Fame.
But here's the thing, also about Krause. Like, Krause was very. Maybe this is the way it is behind the scenes in Green Bay. But Krause it was a big thing that he was always trying to take credit. Do you sense that Brian Gutekunst is doing that also? I don't know. Maybe he is.
No, but
I take credit for what? They haven't won anything.
I do sense that Mark Murphy is a really important figure here. He's the essentially the CEO and president, and he was right there saying goodbye to Brett Favre 15 years ago too. So he's been through this before, and they drafted Jordan Love with the intent to say bye-bye Aaron Rodgers. It just, you didn't see that MVP coming.
All right, time in. Let's head to the NFC South, Greg, the New Orleans Saints.
This team is not as deep as it used to be. I think their first-round pick was surprising because they had so many holes on the roster. Instead, you're putting like Cam Jordan on notice. That's how I took that Peyton Turner pick, because they didn't take any cornerbacks or wide receivers high. Really thin at those positions. Their linebacker used to be kind of deep. Now it's DeMario Davis and nothing else. I think very quietly, the depth of this team, you look at their 2 and 3 receivers are, Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway, has been eroded. So it's not just about the quarterback. It was about what happened when they couldn't spend any money in free agency. I found this draft strange, and I just don't see them as such a built, stacked team for Jameis Winston to take over. Because
there are scouts calling Peyton Turner.
Greg, I see what you're doing. Greg, lowering expectations for his boy Jameis.
Weiss is nodding his head, though. This is not as good a roster as it was. It's got some holes, for sure.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I think that, they're probably annoyed that people were annoyed by their draft, but someone called Peyton Turner, a scout, called him a severe reach. A lot of people like their second-round pick more than their first-round pick in terms of who they got. It's just like, I think that they hit the wall. I think you're right, Greg. we saw the Pats get into trouble with that too. I mean, you can't. There's only so much you can do, and you're losing guys like Trey Hendrickson. Breeze is out the building, and to me, I mean, Jameis Winston is an idea, but it's like, we're going to get this version of Jameis Winston minus the mistakes because Sean Payton is the coach. TBD. There's no guarantee of that.
Yeah, absolutely TBD, and I'm with you, Greg. And no, Cam Jordan's not on notice. Marcus Davenport's on notice. I mean,
but they just gave him a guaranteed contract for next year, the fifth-year deal.
They picked up his option. That's all they did. So I mean, he's being put on notice. Plus, you lose Trey Hendrickson in that defense. You got to have someone who can rush the passer. It's usually, rotational, especially in this division when you got some of the quarterbacks. I mean, look out for Sam Darnold. But it's the roster. They're putting a lot on Jameis. I mean, they really are. We'll see. I think this is one of those things where they'll never say it out loud, but organizations do this. If we have to take a year to reset things, this is the year to do it. And I think the Saints are saying this is our reset year to get the cap right, to try to stay competitive, but to try to figure out who we are for the future. And if we win now, fine and dandy.
That makes a lot of sense. I like where you're coming from on that. And I also wonder, because I've kept waiting all throughout this offseason for Sean Payton to pull a rabbit out of the hat and really bring in like a big-time successor to Drew Brees and see this as kind of a smokescreen, the Winston Taysom Hill thing. It hasn't happened, and perhaps it's not. Or, like what Steve's saying, we're going to see what we got here with these two guys. Maybe it all connects and we have something big that comes out of it. Or maybe next year, Deshaun Watson's on the Saints, or
Russell Wilson.
Or Russell Wilson or somebody else. Maybe there is a big move coming, just not this year.
That makes sense. I think when I'm talking about the roster falling, down a little bit, it's like, who is starting at cornerback on this team? I can't figure it.
You are.
Yeah. There are spots here. Who's starting at tight end? Adam Troutman.
Chris Richard is going to coach up that secondary, my friend. He's back.
The defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mark Sesser.
I would just look at how incredible this team was down the stretch. The points they put up over their final 8 games: 26 points, 31, 47, 44, 31, 30, 31, 31. Byron Leftwich is can we get a little more credit for this guy? I feel like he's completely not mentioned enough for what he's done. I have a 2-part question, though. Do you think, just because everyone's come back, the way that offenses work in the NFL, assuming that Brady stays Brady, that they just pick up where they left off on offense and do their old, dropping 40 on the reg from week 1 through week 18 next year? Or is that just simply not that easy? And secondly, is there who actually in the NFC, if Rodgers were ever to not be on the Packers, to challenge this team? What team stands out as anyone that's going to get in their way?
I as a journalism school graduate, Mark, you do the double question thing a lot, which they say don't do that because they're usually just going to pick one of your questions.
Well, I didn't go to journalism school, so missed that lesson, and also don't
Plus,
care.
you're asking 3 people, so do you want us each to answer both parts of the question?
I mean, you just chewed up 26 seconds, Greg, by not doing anything productive.
Answers.
So answer it as you wish, or answer none of it.
I forgot them.
I think the offense does pick up where it left off. I don't know if they can keep it going the whole season, but I think a lot of times the Patriots would come out of those defending championship in September. They would just they would roll, and I don't see any reason not to. For this team, keeping that motivation, keeping that level of play through 18 weeks, it's going to be a different season. I'm not counting on their defense being as good as it was, because this was a defensive team. As good as the offense was at the very end, this was a defensive team.
And remember, those points were scored because that defense was giving them short fields.
Right.
I mean, they were getting takeaways, taking away possessions, and then really putting them in position where left and Arians could call great plays. I don't like the fact of not changing. I think every team in the NFL, it's different than the NBA, right? The Spurs can keep their starting 5 and reel off 4 or 5 straight championships just because of the nature of the game and great coaching and things like that. But in the NFL, I think you have got to change parts every now and then, because if you hit a slump, guys can get sour. Or if you start rolling, guys can be like, okay, we got this, or we can turn it on. And you may meet that buzzsaw one week who you just can't beat, because as we know in the NFL, it's a game of matchups. And so I like the fact they're bringing everyone back. They're an imposing team. They're the team.
A lot of mouths to feed, though, on offense. If ever there was a disease of more type of team, this is it.
Doesn't Brady's
Yeah, I mean-
presence though like quell like what could be turmoil with a different type of quarterback?
Dude,
I think so.
you're a student of the game, Steve. You're a student of the game, Steve. Do you remember a defending champion ever going this all in on bringing back the same team? Or having this level
No,
of
but
success?
I mean, most defending champions didn't have quarterbacks who took less to make sure it happens either.
Right.
All right. See what happens. The Atlanta Falcons. Fittingly, it's Steve Wyche.
And, the expectations here are completely unknown. Look, they clearly committed to Matt Ryan by not going for a quarterback, even to the point where they signed A.J. McCarron as his backup going into the draft. So this is Matt Ryan's team for this year. He has got weapons. They drafted 2 interior offensive linemen who are plug-and-play type of guys. Now can they coach them up to protect Matt Ryan, who has been sacked like crazy over the past 3 years? And his tenure with Dirk Cutter as his OC, who's no longer there, higher interceptions, higher sack rate, just by whatever's going on right there. Getting Kyle Pitts as tight end, that's going to help. The big question is the Julio Jones factor, because we just talked about Aaron Rodgers possibly getting moved. This is real. Okay, this is very real that Julio Jones could get moved before training camp because their cap is busted, right? And they figure he's the one high salary guy that teams are calling about. They can't take back salary. So if they can get future picks, seconds, people are saying got to get 2 for. He's 32 and he's been nicked up. His trade value will never be higher than it will be before going into training camp. So they are going to listen. So if you don't have Julio Jones, Matt Ryan's a different quarterback, even with Kyle Pitts, when he doesn't have Julio Jones. And this defense, they drafted some players, but they still have a ways to go, especially changing defensive fronts. Who knows the Atlanta Falcons? I mean, this is a total toss-up type of team. I think maybe they can win 6 games. They can win 10 or 11. You just don't know.
These guys are super tired of me bringing this up, but I mean, they have like 24 less players than other teams in the NFL, and there's 6
They
million
signed like 20. They
over
signed
the
like
cap.
20 undrafted free agents, so that'll do it.
But that to the
partly.
Julio Jones point, it's not like we want to move Julio Jones because of his age or his durability. It's like we've got to find a way to create cap space, and I just wonder though. I know there'll be a taker, but is Julio Jones right now someone that another team? I mean, the wide receivers have been drafted. Like teams have fulfilled those needs. Who's going to come after Julio Jones and give a ton away? I think that's tricky.
Like
the Raiders. The Raiders.
There'll be someone.
Put them at the top of the list.
The Raiders' first round pick next year for Julio Jones.
I don't know if any team's going to give up a first rounder.
I mean, if you don't get a first, then what are we doing here? Life is too short.
Cap.
Let's just see Julio Jones and Kyle Pitts together.
It's a cap.
They
it's
have
a cap
to, right?
issue.
I get it, but for a second round pick, you can always move money around.
I mean, I would
No,
think
it'd
there
be
were
multiples.
like 10 teams that can fashion themselves contenders that would see Julio Jones as a guy that could put them over the top.
Mo
offense.
Sanu got a second. You're going to send out Julio Jones for a second? That's disrespectful.
Who'd you get that second from there, Greg?
Some chumps in Foxborough. It was a bad idea. Just put them together. Who cares? Dean Pease will save this defense. The getting rid of Quinn might be an upgrade. I mean, let's
Greg's
be
on
real.
tilt a little bit right now. What's going on?
Just saying. I want to see them together.
Oh, I want to call timeout. I'm going to use the second timeout.
Oh, wow.
And remember, we never go into the tunnel without using our timeouts, and I'm not using the third. Just going to throw that out there.
All right.
Steve, you got a gig with the Falcons.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. You're
Thank
a
you.
contributor on their website, all sorts of content. And without getting too personal, how much are they paying you?
You just got too personal. I'm not going to. I'll put it this way: I'm not going to bust their salary cap. Yeah, no. Now, look, I mean, the cool part is I'm going to help. I'm going to do the Mina Kimes and be in the preseason booth. I mean, that's how this all started.
Ooh, that's fun.
Oh,
So-
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's how it all started. Something I really wanted to do, and so I'm going to be in the booth with Coy Wire and DJ Shockley, 2 guys I covered when they were with the Falcons. And so, yeah, I'm gonna give that a whirl, and everything else just kind of expanded off of that. So
All right, well, start watching your A.J. McCarron tape because you're going to be seeing a lot
I'm
of
on
him
it
in August.
I cannot wait.
If you're worried, the reason why the Falcons are in such salary cap hell is that Weiss contract they took on.
Oh, it's
That's what it is.
cumbersome.
Sure.
Are they going to send
sure
you to
that
the preseason games? Is that the plan? Like, where are we
Yeah.
at with the COVID preseason landscape here?
Hey guys, I'll give you a tip, and you guys will
Yeah.
appreciate this. Since we're in timeout, I'm getting paid more than all of us are getting paid for our podcast.
Oh, you can say that
Too
again.
soon?
I love
Soft
that. I mean,
subject?
timeout doesn't mean that it's not going to air, Steve. It still will be on the podcast. But I
It's okay. It's all
appreciated it.
good.
Steve, I have a mortgage now, but we'll talk off mic.
No, wait, Steve. Does this mean that you would potentially relocate to Atlanta down the road if this assignment became bigger and bigger? Because you are you've got Atlanta roots.
Nope.
Is that part of no?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Love LA, man. I'm good here. I have friends, and my mother lives in Atlanta, but I am here.
And only
Steve's one
3
of those guys.
preseason games, right? We're not waiting to bring
Yeah.
out the 3 preseason game season. That's now. Let's do it.
So many
Right,
of
and the
us.
good thing is, it's not a team that I really cover. So, like when we get into the regular season and stuff, it's not like I'm like on the home team if I were to cover a Falcons game because I
No,
just
the
don't
NFL
cover them.
Network requires the Falcons to like be in contention for 12 or 13 wins before they start covering them. It's like they're just out
The
there.
whole NFC South, man.
So many of us are Los Angeles transplants, but few have done it
Right.
better than Steve. Steve is a guy that fits right in here.
Right in,
It's a
baby.
compliment.
Yes.
All right, let us move on. Time in. Carolina Panthers. Okay. Sam Darnold, let's see where he's at now. Okay. Matt Rule, so he's paired with a competent, respected offensive mind. That's an upgrade over you-know-who. He's playing now with one of the great running backs of the last decade in CMC. Hopefully McCaffrey's healthy. He's got an old friend in Robbie Anderson, who they made some real nice music together in New York. DJ Moore, like a sneaky kind of rising star at wide receiver. Second-round pick, LSU wideout Terrence Marshall Jr. Is the Darnold hive, fractured as it may be now that he's been traded, but I still root for the guy, about to be proven right on Sam, or will we remember this as another poor investment at QB by the Carolina Panthers?
My guess it'll be somewhere in the middle where each Hive member like stakes their ground and doesn't move off of it. That he gives you enough that of course it's going to be better.
So
than
like
that,
you with
maybe.
Teddy Bridgewater, basically.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
let's say they have the 19th ranked passing game DVOA like the Panthers did a year ago. Let's say it's about the same as with Teddy. People will defend Darnold because it'll be a lot better than we've ever seen him. And I do worry about the protection there. They didn't go get a left tackle. Really, the entire offensive line looks like a question, and they're not super deep if at wide receiver if Marshall, the rookie, doesn't pan out. So
I mean, it sounds a
There's
lot like the
challenges.
New York Giants situation with Daniel Jones. I mean,
yeah,
if we don't get the version of Sam Darnold that everyone's been crowing about for 3 years here, then we know what he is. But, I don't excuse all his negative plays with the Jets. I understand it was a terrible situation too, but I mean, this is a place to fly. And don't forget Chuba Hubbard at running back that you drafted, one of the best names in the draft.
Hubba.
No, look, I think Darnold's going to do okay. I mean, I look. What did we just talk about with the Saints? Who's playing corner? Right? Falcons. What's their corners aren't good. He is not coming into a buzzsaw of defenses like he had facing Buffalo, facing Miami, and to some degree facing the Patriots. He's got an opportunity here. Okay, so that's part of it. Now he just has to show the acumen to learn an offense. Teddy Bridgewater played well in for a while. He's just got to take some of the opportunities should they surface. That's the one thing Teddy has been, kind of averse to in his career. And having Christian McCaffrey back, healthy guys, that will help him.
And the
All
defense
right,
could
and
be good. They've gotten really young. Like their front four on paper, I think Gross Matos slipped under the radar as a player when he was healthy, was really good last year. Derek Brown, Shaq Thompson, now you add J.C. Horn. Like it's a fun looking defense now.
And I watched
Jeremy Chin.
Darnold every start, every snap Darnold played. He needs to be rebuilt mechanics-wise. I mean, it's not just that he was in a bad situation. He fell into bad habits and had bad coaching. Let's see Matt Rule step up here. I'd love to see it. But just don't be too great, Sam. All right, the NFC West, we close out starting with the San Francisco 49ers, Greg.
We all breathed a sigh of relief. At least I did, just that they drafted Trey Lance because I want to watch this team. You look at the young players in almost every position group, except for maybe the secondary offensive line, and it's as good as any team, I think, in the league. Are we back to the point now, after what happened last year with all the injuries, that we see the 49ers as set up as well as any NFL team to contend for titles over the next 3 or 4 years? Are we there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think I told you, a while back, I saw them as like a looming dynasty in the making. And look at even last year, I'd point to some of their performances with all those injuries. Go watch their 2 games against the Rams. They took care of business. I mean, they're good inside their own division. They've got the best play caller in football. I think for me, it's Trey Lance, who is sort of an outlier in the amount of college production and work that he had versus some of these other guys. I mean, he wasn't used the way that some quarterbacks were, and I think he's a fascinating prospect, but it will be, interesting to see how quickly he develops. Or if he plays.
Yeah, look,
you got Jimmy G still.
Well, they're going to have to develop him, though, because Jimmy G is not durable. I mean, he has played in 30 games in 4 seasons with the Niners. That's why they had to go get a quarterback for the future, but also in case Jimmy goes down, because to Jimmy's credit, when he's not there, they lose, right? So he is a good quarterback, but they've got to get Trey Lance ready in that regard. But otherwise, they're solid. I mean, I'm with you when I say solid. They're set to rip off Super Bowls. They talk about D'Amico Ryans is going to be a pretty seamless transition as DC. We know Bosa's coming back. We know some of those injured players are coming back. If they can get a D-tackle from last year to step up, that defense is going to be okay.
Also,
they've just got to get their offense together, and they've got to stay healthy.
Also, no more excuses. I mean, this is
right.
Shanahan has 1 winning season there, and now you have, in addition to Garoppolo, you have this fallback plan within the season, and / he's the future potentially, and Trey Lance. One of those guys, whoever's on the field, if Shanahan's as good as everyone says, he should be a functional passer or potentially dynamic. And then you look at both sides of the ball. There's so many great players, and they were so killed by injuries last year, even beyond Garoppolo. I have them at number 9 in the power rankings.
Wow.
So to me, they're a top 10 team, even coming off the 6-10 of last year, just because of the potential. It's all there. Now they just got to do it.
I think a lot of people would probably have him even higher. I don't even know. Like, just in terms of talent. They do have some little areas, interior offensive line. They don't really have a third receiver right now, which is surprising because Kyle Shanahan's usually all about that. Their secondary's been turned over, and it's a tough division. That's the thing that would worry me if
division.
I'm not. They lose a lot to the Cardinals, and so that's been a matchup problem. And then you got a really good division to try to get through.
4, 3, 2, 1.
The Arizona Cardinals with Mark Sessler.
All right, I have a 4-part question. All right, no, I don't. But our friend, Jason Zumwalt, okay, a master voice-over artist, a super Cardinals fan, he sent in the question where I'm going to ask you.
Great
okay?
writer.
All of this work on the defense is great, he says. Getting more physical on both sides of the line is great. But if defenses only need to contain Kyler and bat down his passes, which is essentially what happened the last 7 games of last year, the question needs to be asked, is this offense just too short, height-wise? Andy Isabella, Christian Kirk. Now they've taken a 5'7" wide receiver, and of course Kyler himself. Is this basically going to be Pop Warner versus pros? What am I missing here? Zumwalt asks. DK Metcalf was on the board when we grabbed Isabella. Higher graded and higher stature wide receivers were on the board when we took Rondale Moore. What are we doing here?
I like this. I just like it's like the old playground rules. The bigger kids are going to dominate. The smaller kids are going to have trouble. Now, you also got to factor in Kyler Murray's helmet, which is 4 feet tall. So that gets him to an average height. These are all the things you talk about.
Look, when you mention all those receivers, they just can't draft wide receivers. I mean, remember they drafted 3 wideouts. That, 2 of them don't play, and Isabella is just a spot player. So that's why they go out and they trade for D-Hop, and they signed Reggie Wayne. So
AJ Green,
and they're not too short. Yeah, I mean,
let's hope AJ Green has a better time in Arizona than Reggie Wayne did in New England. Yeah,
right. So no, but AJ Green, but Kyler Murray's not too short. What they were doing was a lot of college stuff that got Kyler Murray's butt kicked, and that's why he had the shoulder injury. Was never the same after that. Defensively, they started to come on last year. They had a ton of injuries. Look, they're going to have Chandler Jones back, Marcus Golden on. You talk about a guy who's not talked about enough as a pass rusher. I think J.J. Watt will, at least by reputation, create a lot of attention so those guys can get free. So I think defensively, they're going to be better. They figure out what to do with Isaiah Simmons. But here's something to look at. Earlier Greg was talking about the Bears' leadership having hot butts. There's some warm butts down in Arizona. Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim are not coming into the season with a free pass. I've been told that the way that they finished last year and the fact that even though they won 3 more games, the way that they finished did not sit well.
Ooh, did
So
not sit
we'll
well
see.
with Bidwell. How about that?
That's right. So we'll see, in the toughest division in football, top to bottom, how things play out.
Greg, we have been honking about that. I've been saying I feel like he's going to be high on the hot butt rankings when they come out for us on August. And you pointed out they have made progress.
They've won more,
but
games
it hasn't been
each
like
season.
the progress isn't really the progress necessarily that impresses you. I don't know.
No, they also have Malcolm Butler,
7,
Robert
6,
Alford, and
5,
Byron Murphy as their
4,
top 3 cornerbacks.
3,
They are
2,
going to be targeted.
1.
That's not bad, bro.
Alford's played like 2 games in 2 years. I know he's an Atlanta guy.
AJ Green's 6'4", by the way. Come on, Zomo. Guy's tall as hell. Up next, the Los Angeles Rams, Steve Weish.
And they're probably going to be coming in, I'm assuming, in the top 4 of Dan Hansis' group because the Matthew Stafford trade. And this is now, okay, Sean McVay, if you are that
7.
dude, 7. Ooh, okay.
Okay.
He's got
But
the Jets
if you're
at
that
4,
dude-
so.
And you can stretch the field. Okay, we went on got you to Sean Jackson. Stretch the field with him. We've got great underneath receivers. We've got some talent in running back with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. Oh, the offensive line. How good is it? I mean, you're really managing a lot of guys up there. They feel that they can do some things. Remember, Aaron Cromer is gone. They have taken so many hits to great coaches on their staff. Now, I know Raheem Morris replaces Brandon Staley, but losing Aubrey Pleasant, their defensive backs coach, to Detroit is a major hit. Jalen Ramsey will tell you that. So they're great at developing and procuring players, maybe the best team in the NFL. So you may see a lot of names on defense that you don't necessarily recognize. They'll coach them up. They are masterful so far at doing that. But again, everything is going to hinge on Matthew Stafford, how quickly he adapts. And if this offense can be new, I don't want to say it can resemble what they did the Super Bowl years. It has to be different because defenses have caught up.
Right. Well, and they have to be better than it was a year ago by a lot because you can't expect the defense to be where it was. That was a special season. They had Seattle's number. Like that's not going to repeat in the same way. I just like that it's being framed as like, well, here's the season we finally learned about Matthew Stafford for the 9th straight season. It's like now it's like a new version of it. Next season it'll be, well, that was his first season adjusting to Los Angeles. Here's the season we finally find out.
Isn't he
about
just
Matthew
like really
Stafford.
good?
He's
he's
right.
not necessarily great, but like definitely good enough to be on a title contending.
He's got to
team.
be better than that to be worth, I think, the trade. He's got to be like a top 5 or 6 type of guy.
But that would
I
be
think-
my question too, because it's a severe upgrade over Jared Goff, and I love that they were bold and daring and just went for it and they got it done. But Matthew Stafford, a lot of things to like, but is he being a little overrated here that they're just going to plug him into this offense and the Rams are a Super Bowl team?
I'm fascinated to see it. I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm
think so.
excited to see him in a new place. Yeah.
I think so. They went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff, a young Jared Goff that year is not as good as Matthew Stafford in an average year. And you guys can battle me with that.
No, I'll give you that. I think people have now almost underrated Goff. Like I saw someone say like he, he has no arm talent or whatever. It's like Jared Goff has had some
That's
moments,
crazy.
man. It was
Jared
just
Goff
crazy.
can throw it. It was the giveaways.
That's
It was the giveaways.
5,
completely. I think people are so down on Goff
2,
that it makes it seem like they have a massive upgrade of epic proportions now. But he was never that bad.
Last year,
One thing I really like. The one thing I really liked
got
from
figured out
Greg.
last year.
One thing I like from Greg though is just his complete dismissal of Jim Bob Cooter's OC skills.
Jim Bob Cooter. He's there. I didn't even know he's their offensive
was.
coordinator. Oh.
He was
doesn't like
not
Cooter.
even-
Oh, in Detroit. Yeah.
Greg does not like Cooter. All right. Finally, the Seattle Seahawks. Did you know that the Seahawks made just 3 picks in the entire draft? That's tough. That's a tough one. And there's only been 5 teams since 1967 that have had that few amount of picks. Their first pick at 56th overall was a wide receiver, Dwayne Extridge, and that's good because they were a little thin after DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But Russell Wilson came out and was, honking this offseason. I can't get hit so much. There was really no true investment in the offensive line that I saw. Is this just setting the stage for more drama around Seattle where the team might not be better, the offensive line might not be better, Wilson's probably not going to change his game, so he'll keep getting hit, and this time next year, they're another, they win 10 or 11 games, don't go to the Super Bowl, and more bad blood bubbles up.
I mean,
did they get Gabe Jackson? Did they trade for Gabe Jackson?
Yeah, he's on their roster.
Yeah, so I mean, so they did make some investment.
Okay.
Gabe Jackson's still a pretty good player at guard. And, they've got to get better at guard so they can run the ball. That's what, everything is going to be set up off the run. And they got some pieces. It's just going to be interesting how their new OC, Shane Waldron, is going to implement an offense. Now you have every OC/head coach in this division running the same system. Because Shane Waldron comes from McVay, right? He comes from the Rams.
It's weird.
Every head coach OC is going to run the same system. So they're going to be practicing against the same schemes.
The NFL,
Nothing is going to look unfamiliar. So now is when the players, the smart players, the tough players, and the guys who can execute under duress are really going to shine. And that's where Russell Wilson gets the nod over any quarterback in this division.
But he couldn't figure out the Rams last year. You want to talk to some height truthers. They're out there in Seattle, or at least in this division. The Rams, I think, believe that Wilson's height was a problem going up against their defensive line, that he could not, that they muddied it up enough with their big front line, and the 49ers have a very similar approach, and so does Arizona, that in this division, Murray and Wilson have to be outside of the pocket sometimes to be able to see over the middle. There were times last year where Wilson did not seem like he knew what was going on. It has been totally overlooked how poorly he played the second half of last season. It was all blamed on the offensive line. It was kind of a wild series of games for Russell Wilson, considering the career that he had before that point.
I mean, DK Metcalf basically said that they had figured out their offense, but you have a new offense now, and I wonder. I feel like there's so many agitated quarterbacks that it feels like Russell Wilson's agitation was 6 months ago, and is that gone? Is that solved? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. My whole point is that's all still right underneath the surface.
Yeah.
He's going to be their quarterback. What happens after another potentially disappointing season if they don't get it done?
He'll be playing for Sean Payton down in New Orleans in 2020.
This is good. Wait, we didn't use the final timeout. I'm just going to use it with 1 second to go.
No.
Well, what are we going to
out.
get done during our timeout?
We ran the hurry up offense. We got to the 37-yard line. Triple zeros on the clock, and now we're going to the locker room with a timeout in our back pocket like a bunch of jackasses.
I thought we were taking a timeout with 2 seconds left to let the starters run off the field after two great performances around the AFC and NFC, and everyone just cheers for us, and we bask in the glow.
I guess you could just do that after the game.
I mean, if we're up 27-0,
27-0,
do we need to be taking a timeout?
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think so. Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I thought Mark's point was well served. We're getting more like the NBA here at the NFL, and next season it could be Rodgers, Wilson, Watson. Who knows who else could be up for grabs?
A bunch of Herm Edwards is up in this podcast. Flummoxed by the clock. Steve, you've said it all. I'm sorry about asking about your salary with the Falcons. That was
all right.
Out of bounds and untoward, but I was just curious, and I thought maybe
you like the fact that I said, and I'll say it once again, I'm making more than we all make on our podcasts.
Which, if you're making $1, is true. So
Steve's smart. He does everything here at the NFL. Now it's time to branch out and do some other things too. It's all about the side hustle.
I want a Steve Weiss. I imagine we haven't been to Steve's house yet. Wonder where that invite's been. But I imagine Steve has one of those really nice Southern California backyards where he's got the outdoor kitchen set up and he's a grill maestro, and maybe there's an outdoor grilling show on the Home Network with Steve and his wonderful wife and all the kids, and it's just I don't know, just something else to think about as we continue to diversify what you're about.
Guys, I'm 55, man. I am about to age out of this business. If not voluntarily, people are going to be like, you got to get gone. So I've got to figure something out here.
I saw that house once because you drove me home from a Rams game. I wasn't invited, and then I called an Uber from there. But it's a nice house, had a nice looking backyard, a nice everything. I mean, it was.
We
good.
had talked about getting together as a group, but then something called a pandemic struck the country and probably put that on ice for a bit.
For some reason, I just had this image of the soccer practice where one mom or dad forgets to pick up their kid, and then the coach has to drive the kid home, and it's really just kind of sad. That was Steve driving Greg back from some Rams practice.
No. I was being a teammate.
Nice guy. He was being a nice guy.
I was being a teammate, helping Rosie out.
Did he help pay for gas? I'm assuming the answer would be yes, that he pitched in.
The answer would be it wasn't asked for, Mark.
I know,
Right,
but he should know to do that without asking. Greg, that's manners 101.
You peel off a Hamilton, and that's it.
My version of that was insisting he not drive me back to work, that I can take an Uber from his house, but it's going to get me most
He was
of the way
ashamed. He was ashamed, like, hey, drop me off 3 blocks from
No.
the office just so nobody sees us happy.
Isn't Greg wearing the same thing he wore last night? All right, Steve, thank you so much, buddy. And yes, make sure the Huddle and Flow podcast to check that out. Give it a listen. Trotter and Steve kill it on that and get amazing guests and have really meaningful, interesting, fun conversations. Check it out. And the Atlanta Falcons gig and everything else. Steve Weish, top of the
I'm
world.
checking out that preseason.
How about that?
Appreciate you guys.
All
See you-
right, there
see
you
you,
go.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, and there we go. After another week of podcasts on the Around the NFL podcast. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We love these shows every year. Feel really caught up. Friday, network shows back. The Around the NFL broadcast. Check that out. And then next week, another full week of shows. So that's it. This is Dan Hansa signing off for Quiet Storm, the old boss, Steve Weish, Ricky Hollywood, behind the glass, virtually. Until Tuesday, heed the call.